It's draft day in the NBA, but all the talk is the busy trade season already underway. The Boston Celtics continue to shed talent and salary. Jrue and KP are out. Are Jaylen Brown and Derek White next? The Mavs go all in on Kyrie Irving, and which contender do Matt and Haize think are primed to jump into the top 10 of this year's NBA draft? That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets, your shot clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories every day with the help of Locked On's local experts. And I have two of the best with me, as always, from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network. It's Matt Moore. Matt.
Great thing about the draft is that everybody gets something that they want. You want the human interest stories and the beautiful moment of the family crying. You get that. You want the excited moment of a kid having to wear a hat of a team that he's actually not going to play for. You get that. You want the trades and the chaos and the madness. You get that. It's going to be a great night in the NBA.
And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Haize. Haize.
Well, the thing that I want is the Bulls to find a way to trade up and get Ace Bailey. Am I going to get that, Matt? Am I going to get that?
You already have a largely inefficient chucker. Why do you want another one?
Could I interest you in Jonathan Kuminga? A lot of reports have the Bulls linked to Kuminga. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the answer there is no. No, thank you.
Okay. The lead up to the NBA draft has been, as predicted, filled with transactions as teams try to navigate the second apron and position themselves for tonight's draft. The Boston Celtics were back at it again after dealing Jrue Holiday to the Portland Trail Blazers. Kristaps Porzingis has been traded to the Hawks in a three-team deal that also involved the Brooklyn Nets. The Celtics get George Niang and a second-round pick back. John Krause of Locked On Celtics, what's going on here?
It's about minimizing the damage. I've written this, said it a million times. You have a goal to accomplish, and you did financially. You managed to do that. Get back Simons, who's a good offensive player. I mean, he will score points. It'll change who the Celtics are, just their DNA. It's not going to be a defensive team. Simons can be attacked. If Niang's on the floor, he's going to be attacked. But both of those guys can hit shots. And you know what? Sometimes that would be enough. Yeah. And no one's going to sit here and pretend the Celtics are, hey, here's a contender. Here comes banner 19. But they didn't eliminate themselves. The Celtics can sit there and be like, we've cut our salary. Now we get to team build.
John Krause would also say that these moves by Brad Stevens, brilliant, he called them. Matt, do you feel the same way? Is this starting to look more like a gap year teardown? And if so, who should be making a play or who should be making a call right now for Jaylen Brown or Derek White?
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't know where they're at, John. Like they're brilliant. Okay, you got Anthony Simons. If you swap him, okay, maybe like you can see the reason I don't want to criticize any of these moves. And somebody was upset yesterday because I was talking about how they weren't out of the apron yet. They're out of the apron now, and I just expected them to cut more salary, but they've gotten out of the second apron. If they move one of White or Brown for an elite pick, a top pick in the draft, and then use that to go get somebody else that's like a major player, I don't know if they need that, then maybe this makes a little bit more sense. They just feel stuck between stations to me, Haize, is like, I don't know. Are they contending? Are they not contending? Is Simons really part of your future? Is he not part of your future? Who's going to be your next guy? If you trade Brown, who's your other guy? They still seem to me very much stuck in kind of a middle. And I think that by the end of it, it'll make sense. Right now, I do not. The future is cloudy by the Magic 8 Ball for me.
Yeah, it's definitely cloudy. I like what they did as far as getting under the second tax apron. This shows when you come in with the goal and you're focused on doing it, you get it done. They got it done. They're now under the second tax apron, but it's not like this roster, you look at it and you're like, this all makes perfect sense. No, there's a little bit of it they still got to figure out, and it's perfect. It is a gap year. I think you can let Anthony Simons be him. They could very well look to flip him by the trade deadline and get more assets. I wouldn't be against that either. The Boston Celtics, though, there'll still probably be a playoff team. If Jaylen Brown's going to be fully healthy, you keep him, you keep White. You still have a lot of players on that team that make a lot of sense. That you could be a playoff team in the East for sure. And that may be good enough in a year where you're not going to have Jason Tatum for the majority of the year, and we just don't know what this team's going to look like. They've given themselves flexibility, whereas before, they didn't have a lot of flexibility. Now, by getting under the second tax apron, you get a player like Anthony Simons back. It gives you flexibility on what your next step is going to be, because they are not done reconstructing this roster if they want, when Jason Tatum is fully back healthy, for them to be contenders right again in the Eastern Conference.
Right, but you want that flexibility to build a team that can win 60-plus games, which they did the last 2 years. Like, getting out of the second apron just saves their owners $109 million. Woohoo. I'm not, like, as a fan, I'm not excited for that. Like, this team was still really good and probably would have, if they just kept the squad together, which would have been difficult with Luke Cornett's upcoming free agency, they probably would have still made a run to be like a 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, because that conference sucks. And so, like, they got worse, and maybe they can get better long term. And this is like the setup for them to go after another big name. But those are always risky propositions. Like, we killed these other teams that position themselves and miss on that. I'm not saying that they're going to be bad. Like, this, Stevens has done a really good job of managing everything. But like, what Stevens has done here is he's navigated what the owners want, save money, and not had to fire sale these guys. They've still gotten good return back, but it's not like they got better return, and that's not to be expected. I just don't know what this is actually going to look like. I don't know what this is. I don't know if they're going to keep Brown. I don't know if they're going to keep White. I don't know what this team is going to look like. And if, like, all of this is so that you can re-sign Al Horford at age 39 and Luke Cornett, like, who's your front court? I have questions. I have more questions than answers. Again, I'm not trying to sit here. I'm really not trying to criticize where the Celtics are at. I don't think they're going to be bad. I'm just wondering. I don't know where this goes.
Okay. What about the Atlanta side of this? They add Kristaps Porzingis, Brad Rowland of Locked On Hawks. Like the idea, particularly if he can stay healthy, obviously. Like the idea of the ad. Didn't love the fact that they gave up some assets to acquire Terrence Mann and then moved him out and did not really recoup those assets. Haize, what do you think about the KP to Atlanta addition?
If he's going to be healthy more than he's not, then I love it for them. I think he's exactly what they need at that center position. I think he's going to do good for them. Him and Trey can be really nice together. Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels. Like, as long as everybody stays healthy, I see that this being a team now that, instead of hopefully being in the play-in, that they actually can contend for a playoff spot and get out of that. Now, I don't know if it makes them all of a sudden some crazy contender in the East, but then again, we don't know what the East is going to look like with Tatum, Halliburton, and Dame all being hurt at the start of the season and missing the majority of next year. So I guess it gives them that window, but I don't look at this like some deal that surefire makes them a contender in the Eastern Conference.
The idea of it's really great, right? The idea of it's awesome. It's just like, how many games are you going to get? If you get 50 games, I have a question. After this illness, what's his situation? Clearly the deal, he passed the physical, right? Because the deal's done. But what does this look like in terms of his health availability? After the Isaiah Thomas disaster, I'm just always nervous about, guy has health downturn, Celtics trade him. I get a little nervous. So I'm just really curious what that looks like. But I want to buy in. Can I just say, though, what does Onyeka Okongwu have to do to get the starting job? He finally got the starting job, Doug, and they took it away from him again.
I don't have an answer for you there. I'm also confused about the Nets part in this. They get another first-round pick in tonight's draft. I believe that makes 5 total. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total first-round picks. Are they planning to build a college all-star team in Brooklyn?
So you do this to try and move up, and there's a lot of talk about them wanting Bailey. And so, yeah, you're able to put all these picks together and then move up for taking on the Paul George contract, and then you take Bailey too. What is this? What do the Sixers want with 5 draft picks? Like, what do they want with 3 picks if they send those? What's the value there? Do the Sixers want to use those to go get somebody else? Like, there's all these pieces, and I have no idea how this fits together. But between what Utah's done, what Boston's done, where Philly's at, and what the Nets are doing, something's weird. It's just I'm doing the Windhorst. I do not know what is going on here, because it does seem like are things that are being moved towards to give them the opportunity to do, but I don't know what the end result is going to be. I feel like tomorrow we're gonna be like, oh, that's what happened. I'm excited for tonight to find out.
Do I need to break out the whiteboard? Do we have to have a whiteboard to track all this? Do I need to have a whiteboard up in here somewhere for us to do that?
A Derek whiteboard? I like it. I love that idea. We'll figure it all out. We are paying attention to breaking news as we do this show. We're taping at about 12 p.m. Eastern time in the lead up to the draft, and we do have a little bit here. Shams Charania tweeting just a few minutes ago, Houston Rockets guard Fred VanVleet intends to sign a 2-year, $50 million contract to stay with the franchise with a player option in 26-27. Sources tell ESPN Rockets are declining VanVleet's $44.9 million team option, and they get a new deal. I will get Matt and Haize's reaction to that deal on the other side. Not the only point guard deal in the West. Kyrie Irving reportedly signing an extension with the Mavericks. We'll have some sound from Locked On Mavericks as well. We'll continue to talk about the NBA draft. This is an absolutely stacked episode of Locked On NBA. More ahead. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business like I am, every missed call could be a missed opportunity. Think about it. Last time you had a service emergency and you had to call someone, did you wait for a call back? Probably not. You just called someone else. That's why you need OpenPhone. It's the #1 business phone system that streamlines your customer communication and helps you scale, all from an app that's on your phone or computer. I love that I don't need to carry 2 phones. One's enough. With OpenPhone, I can manage business calls and text from one app on my same phone, whether I'm at my desk or on the go. My favorite feature, the shared inbox. My whole team can jump in to a conversation without missing a beat. Plus, the AI call transcripts and summaries are game changers for staying on top of follow-ups and customer interactions. And right now, OpenPhone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months. Just go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you're switching from another provider, guess what? They'll even port your number over for free. OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. So on the other side, I just said Fred VanVleet, signing a 2-year, $50 million contract to stay with the Houston Rockets. Haize, your reaction to the deal?
I think it's a good deal. I think both sides get exactly what they want. Fred VanVleet gets paid really well for what he brings to that team. They get to keep a point guard, which they're going to need, and some veteran leadership to add with KD now coming to the team and them losing Dylan Brooks. So I like the deal for both sides. I'm glad that they were able to work something out. Now the Rockets can just focus on, they still got the draft and stuff to come up here, and I think another move's coming, but the Rockets get to focus on getting ready to contend in that Western Conference.
I think it's interesting because, he makes $6 million more guaranteed off of this deal, but obviously, they had the ability with that team option to go ahead and just be like, enter free agency, which means that FVV didn't think that he could get in this free agency market with no teams having cap space, that ability. Like, this sets him up this is great for VanVleet in the sense that now he's able to opt out with the player option. He controls that option to be able to enter in the 2026, right? So he goes into 2026 when everybody's going to have cap space. And now it's going to be, oh, you missed out on XYZ, but they got Fred VanVleet, who's right there. And now he's able to get maybe a long-term payday for what might be the last big contract of his career. Obviously likes Houston. Obviously, he fits there. I think it's really good to have VanVleet next to KD. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me. They need somebody who can do what he does. The numbers all kind of said last year. It was weird because some of the box score stuff wasn't good for Fred VanVleet. When you looked at the on-off splits, they were better with VanVleet on the floor by a wide margin. So I think it helps them long-term.
And is it good for them in terms of, they acquire Kevin Durant, just having some continuity at the point guard position and a guy that knows the system as it stood before Kevin Durant to kind of make all of that work? Is that important, Matt?
I think so. I think that when you look at the bigger question, I think with how this is going to work out is it also gives the Rockets another trade opportunity down the line, right? Like if they're able to move it with a player option, even they're still able, if they want to go chase another guy. Haize, are they going to wind up being like, hey, we'll give you Fred VanVleet and one of your picks back for Devin Booker? Is that what's going to wind up happening here?
Oh man, that would be the ultimate fleece if that's the case. So no, I do think they do maintain some flexibility, but that would be crazy if it happens. Nico Harrison's not running them, so you don't have to worry about that.
No, he's not, but he is running the Dallas Mavericks, and the Dallas Mavericks signed Kyrie Irving reportedly to a 3-year, $119 million contract. Sources tell ESPN there's a player option for the 27-28 season. Let's get the reaction from Locked On Mavericks and Nick Angstead.
I knew that Kyrie had a ton of leverage on the Mavericks, and I don't think that this deal screams he raked them over, held them over a barrel, right? It's just a great deal, and it's great for Kyrie too. I think it's just such a testament to the player that he's been, the person that he's become at this point. Because I think there is some growth in his life as well that got him to this point and got him to where he is and how he's dealing with not just media, but everybody, and dealing with everything, dealing with his own fame and on the court and everything. I think that Kyrie's been through a lot, and it's incredible to see what he's been through, what he is doing now. And yeah, I just think that this contract is a testament to that everybody's going to respond to it positively, I think.
All right, is Nick Angstead right? Is everyone going to respond to this positively? Haize, how do you view it?
I mean, yeah, I think it's a good deal. I mean, it does suck that he's going to miss the beginning of the season after the injury, but I think they'll be able to, with all the point guards on the market, they'll be able to find a stopgap point guard for themselves. But this does just signal that that right or wrong, Nico Harrison does believe that this team has a chance to compete for something with the changes and getting Cooper Flagg in there. And I guess we just got to see what the results of that going to be. But as far as just the deal itself, I think it's a fair deal for Kyrie.
The money's not bad here, but Kyrie Irving with idle hands is not something I would feel awesome about. Like, well, I think there's a lot of like, he's, the growth and like, and Nick does a great job of painting with a rose-colored brush there in Dallas. That's how bad the Luka trade was, that he was so upset and was critical of it. That's when you know it's bad. I will just say, like, we'll see how this works out. He's going to be 34 off of 2 major injuries in his career. A lot of miles on him, a lot of idle hands, a lot of idle time. Let's keep an eye on what that Instagram feed shows over the next 16 months.
Well, Nick and Isaac there with Locked On Mavericks were confident in his leadership. They felt like that was a big part of the deal, that even when they had Luka, that Kyrie was a leader in that locker room and will continue to be so. The question, as Haize brought up, who is going to be the stopgap while he recovers from a torn ACL? Mark Stein had a little bit of reporting on that, I believe, this morning. The Mavs, writing in his Substack, the Mavs can make a free agent run at D'Angelo Russell because of Kyrie Irving's new deal. It has a lower year-one salary than his $43 million player option. Matt, does D'Angelo Russell make much sense for the Mavericks, or do you have another name in mind that could be a stopgap until Kyrie reportedly could return by January?
Yeah, no, there's not any good options here for them in free agency. It's a bad free agency class, and they've only got certain options. I don't know that D'Angelo Russell is the option, but I am kind of like, well, if you're hinging your season on Anthony Davis, why not go ahead and go along with D'Angelo Russell too? My big reaction to this is feeling pretty bad for Cooper Flagg, feeling more and more bad for Cooper Flagg. This is not the situation that I would like my number 1 pick to walk into, and everyone's gonna be like, oh, but he gets to learn from veterans and the veteran leadership. And I don't know, man. I'm pretty skeptical of how this is all gonna go with Dallas, Haize.
Yeah, I mean, I like the D'Angelo Russell. I think that makes some sense, but I think they have for what they need, I think they have a solid crop of point guards. Dennis Schroeder is out there. He's a guy that I think makes some sense for them. Chris Paul, as a veteran that can still facilitate, at least he can make some sense for them as well. I think both Jones brothers, Trey and Tyus Jones, both can make some sense for them as well as point guards. I like Dennis Schroeder for them. I think he played solidly last season, and I think he can accept a bench role once Kyrie is back. So I think they have a nice amount of options that they can go after for a stopgap point guard to come in and do some scoring and some other things for them. I think they have at least 3 or 4 options there.
Haize, do you agree or disagree with what Matt said there, that this is a difficult situation for Cooper to walk into as the number 1 overall selection, not going to a team where he's going to have really all of the shots and the offense is really not going to be generated through him? He will be playing with some veterans, might contend in a playoffs, but could be a difficult situation for a number 1 overall pick.
It could be, but I think it's less difficult than going to a team that completely sucks and has nothing, and you can get all the shots that you want, but you're sitting there losing games and not competing for anything. So while it could be difficult where he has to find his rhythm and find his flow, I actually think that could be good for him in the long run to know how to fit in with other players and find ways to make the most of the opportunities that he does get. So it's difficult per like what you expect a number 1 overall pick to walk into, but I think he's walking into something with more structure, even though that's weird to say about a franchise where Nico Harrison is the GM. But I think it's a pretty good situation for him to come into.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a guy that helps you win games. That's the thing, is his versatility is the kind of thing that helps you win. And that's probably is better than going to a place that's got bad culture and those kind of fits. I'm just kind of like, well, these are all kind of like veteran guys that have kind of not great histories of leadership. Like, when has Anthony Davis ever been the best player on a team ever? When is he available? Like, how does that, is that going to put undue pressure on Flagg? Why is the team struggling? And all these types of questions. D'Angelo Russell's your point guard. And I don't know, man. It can work. I could be wrong here. I'm not projecting them to be like a lottery team. I'm just really kind of uncertain about what this is going to look like, given the personalities, the fit, and the age on these players involved. I do think it's sometimes better for you to be, what you want is you want a young guy in a young situation with good like coaching, leadership structure, good culture. Like if the Spurs had landed 1, how good would you feel? I do want to note Dylan Harper is a Nike athlete. So until that name is called tonight, I am still going to be keeping an eyebrow up.
Well, the good news for Cooper Flagg is that if it doesn't work, the Mavericks certainly haven't been shy about pivoting. My only advice to Cooper Flagg is just make sure you stay in the gym. Take some pictures, send them to management, make sure you know that they know that you're in the gym. We are going to be talking more about the NBA draft coming up. It is tonight, and Ace Bailey still making headlines around his decision-making pre-draft, and which contender would at least surprise Matt and Haize to see jump into the top 10 of tonight's draft. Boston Celtics, LA Lakers? I'll ask them ahead. Plus, we'll have more on this, the Pacers offseason decisions that they have ahead after Tyrese Halliburton's injury in Game 7 of the Finals. That's all ahead on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Wayfair. There is nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you are wanting to update your patio this season, Wayfair has made it super easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours. Comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. Summer is here. Summer is hitting us all in the face right now, particularly if you are in the eastern part of the country. Wayfair has everything you need to level up your outdoor space: conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, and yes, even those perfect string lights to really set the vibe. It's like giving your backyard that resort feel without the resort price tag. I'm in the middle right now of giving my own front porch a refresh, and my style leans clean and modern, so I loved that I could go onto the website, I could filter and find exactly what fits my space and my budget. Don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now and shop a huge outdoor selection. That's WYAFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. The NBA draft is tonight. We'll have local reaction all over your YouTube feed throughout the night. Make sure you're subscribed to your favorite local team's podcast as well. Top prospect Ace Bailey deflected questions about how he and his team have approached the pre-draft process, as one of his potential future teammates, Paul George, said this about Bailey on the latest episode of his podcast, quote, "If I'm Ace Bailey, I can't get mad if my stock drops. He's canceled all workouts. He hasn't worked out for any team. So I think they made a big deal because we were scheduled to work him out and he canceled the day of. But he hasn't worked out for any team. You're not in a position to be making those demands. Make it to the league first." Haize, does Podcast P have a point about Ace Bailey?
Yeah, to a degree, he definitely does. I think It's a delicate situation to be in, but like we said when we talked about it the other day, like the last thing that I would want for any player is that before you even get into the league, you're filled with any type of drama, whether it's from you, whether it's from bad advice, whatever it is. So I do think that he makes very solid points here. And Podcast P is when he's on the podcast and talks about the game of basketball, actually makes some really good points. Just needs to be on the basketball court a little bit more himself while he's talking about Ace Bailey. But yeah, I think he made some great points here.
I mean, look, but he's right. The players are always going to be a little skeptical of the rookies. Like, they're just always going to be. It's really funny how they transition from being very much of like empowering of themselves as rookies and as prospects to then transitioning to, well, now you got to earn it. Right. For me, not for thee. But I think he's right. One of the things I will try and paint a positive view of this, because I just think it's very. Look, the Occam's razor here is just like, yeah, no, he's been badly managed. His agent has done him a disservice, and it could wind up costing him a lot in terms of where he lands, how much money he makes, etc. Like, it's always good to make more guaranteed money, and you could lose significant money going from top 3 to if you fall out of the top 10. The objective here is to ensure long-term money, and that money is always much bigger. Like, you're talking about a couple of million between a top 3 pick and a top 12 pick. You're talking about tens of millions, hundreds of millions if you become the guy for a franchise. Instead of thinking of this from the perspective of we're rejecting you, think of it from the perspective of this is how much we want to go here and what that says to that organization. Let's say, hypothetically, it was a team like, oh, I don't know, that plays in one of the boroughs that isn't Manhattan. And that team is willing to take a risk on you. And that team has the assets to move up for you. And that team might be willing to take on a large contract for a certain podcaster. If you're willing to do all those kind of combos, right? If you're willing to do all that, and you are indicating to that team, we have canceled with all of these other teams because that's how much we want you. That does build a relationship, because the team isn't going to look at how you treated the other squads. They're going to care about how much you've shown you want to be part of their program. So you can turn it into a positive if that's the kind of team. But that, to me, is the question.
No, it's a good point, particularly if you're not in contention for the number 1 overall selection. It's not necessarily a popularity contest. It is really about making one team love you enough to select you where you want to be selected. Which contender would at least surprise you to see jump into the top 10 of tonight's draft? The Lakers don't pick until number 55. The Nuggets don't have a pick at all. The Celtics, they're doing a lot of shuffling already, and there are some whispers that they're looking to move up. Which of these contenders, Matt, would you be least surprised to see jump into the top 10 tonight?
Is Boston a contender?
Well, that all depends on what they do with Jaylen Brown and Derek White, right? I mean, I think that there's still some question in a weak Eastern Conference how much they can compete. So do you think Boston could jump into the top 10?
I wouldn't be surprised. It would be a very Boston thing for everyone to be like, well, they're taking a step backward. And their way of taking a step backward is that they get an elite pick in the draft. Like, think about the kind of moves that they have done, moving out of the number 1 and then landing Jason Tatum. Like, they have done these kind of things before. This is how they have operated in the past. And they are willing to their scouting department is phenomenal. It's terrific and it stayed intact. That is a strength of their organization. The other one to look at, honestly, is like OKC. I mean, just won the title. Don't really need the guy. But if you want to shuffle out Isaiah Joe, you want to move on from Aaron Wiggins, you want to keep the pipeline of young guys, using all these assets to move in and getting a player that projects as a at worst rotation guy with upside to be able to replace, if you need to, one of the megastars if the cap gets tight. That sounds like a very Presty thing to do.
I agree with Matt there on OKC. OKC is always the one to watch out for because they have the picks, they have the assets, they have the players, they have just about everything they want. If they, for example, I'm not saying this is, but if they identify Derek Queen as the guy that they just felt like they wanted in this draft, and by any means necessary that they were going to get, who's going to say no to what assets the OKC Thunder have? Who's going to say no to young players that have been proven who've now won a title? On top of that, a bevy of picks that you can get from all over the place that aren't tied to the Thunder's win-loss record. So those picks are probably going to be good regardless. Like the Thunder are the team that if they wanted and zeroed in on getting anybody, I just don't see how you stop them from getting them.
And despite winning a title, they still clearly showed some weaknesses in that lineup. If they are serious about competing, if they can find some shooting in that top 10, I think it would make a lot of sense. And they don't have to go very far. They already have the 15th pick, so they wouldn't have to maneuver too much to get into that top 10. I think that's some good thinking. I'm looking at the San Antonio Spurs. I don't know if they're a contender, but they have the 14th pick as well. I think sort of same situation. If they want to jump back into that top 10 and find someone else to pair alongside Wemby and Dylan Harper and all of these players that they're going to be taking into the next season, that wouldn't surprise me either. All right, final thing here. The Indiana Pacers offseason plans became complicated as soon as Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles in Game 7 of the Finals. Let's listen to Tony East talk out the road ahead for the runners-up.
Any discussion of the Pacers offseason doesn't actually start with any one player or any one thing. It actually starts with question one: what is next season about for the Pacers? Very easy to say, well, it could be a development year. People use this term for the Bucks without Dame or the Celtics without Tatum, a gap year, right? A gap year. And the Pacers are fortunate that they got their own pick back in that trade they made with the Pelicans. But okay, that's fine if it's a gap year. What do you want that gap year to be about, right? The central figure and the biggest part of the Pacers offseason is Miles Turner. He's a free agent. He's not eligible to be extended, so nothing can happen until July 1st. It's so obvious to me that they should be wanting to keep Miles Turner because there's no alternative. There is no way to get a center as good as him. They can't do it without a trade. Why trade when you have him on the team and you have his bird rights right now?
Should the Pacers outbid the competition for Miles Turner and charge ahead without Tyrese Halliburton for a season, Matt?
This is tough, man, because Turner's gonna make so much money on this deal, and the Pistons signaled yesterday that they were not going to be as aggressive in free agency as I had heard. Like, I'd heard that they were going to be a team that looked at a guy like Miles Turner and maybe made a big offer for him. And instead they came out and Trajan Langdon was like, yeah, no, I think we're pretty much just going to on internal development. So if there's not a market for him, I don't know. Tying up that kind of money long term, is Turner still going to be what you need in 2 years when Hallie's back? In a year and a half, right? Is he still going to be there? I still think they can probably compete, though. I think they can make the playoffs next year, even without Halliburton. I think with Nembhard, Nesmith, if they're able to keep that kind of group intact, Mathurin's going to be a question. Part of the problem, again, this is the problem with the CBA, is like you're going to have to make a decision. You can have the depth or you can keep Turner. You can't do both. And that, to me, I think is going to be a tough one for them to kind of navigate going into the summer. But it sounds like they've made up their mind, and it's going to be Turner.
Well, yeah, Rick Carlisle said on a radio interview that's re-signing Miles Turner was the number one priority for the Pacers. Haize, do you think Chad Buchanan there in Indiana was like, hey, Rick, hold on. Like, what are you doing? Where's my leverage?
Yeah, this question, the only thing that I think changes, if you would have asked me this before Tyrese Halliburton went down, I would have think that, yeah, they're going to keep Miles Turner. They're going to do whatever they need to. But I think the Terrence Halliburton injury is the one thing that adds a wrinkle into this. Do you want to potentially pay the luxury tax, which is something that they don't do, for a year in which Tyrese Halliburton's not going to be there? Now, I still think that they're going to be a tough team in the Eastern Conference. I still think that they have a chance to make it to the second round, even without Tyrese Halliburton, but just because of the coaching, the depth that they have, all those type of things. So that's the question that you get to here. And then to Matt's point, by the time Tyrese comes back, are you still able to be a contender? I think that they hold on to Miles Turner here. If they need to flip him, at least you have him locked into a contract. As we've already talked about, there's no contract that's unmovable really in the NBA. It's just the situation. So I think that they'll lock him in. They'll outbid the other teams to keep him there.
Retain your talent. Keep on winning. It's worked for Indiana so far. Why stop now? If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Thanks to Matt and Haize for their expertise every day. You got one more thing, Matt? We got a few seconds here.
How dare you not talk about the Wizards trading for CJ McCollum? How dare you, sir? We'll do it tomorrow.
Well, yeah, and you can check out the episode of Locked On NBA Game Night. They had it, so you can listen to that there. Also, they'll be recapping the draft tonight, and then we'll be back tomorrow for more analysis of everything for your second listen. Check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to tonight's NBA draft. Enjoy our beautiful draft tonight. Be kind to each other. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NBA.